Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod, Hector, and Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. You are in Toronto, but I
I am.
bet your place does not have an outdoor pool. You still haven't found one, huh?
No, I'm going to be swimming. I've got a bunch of work today to do on the court, and then I'm going to be swimming in an indoor pool. Whatever. That is what it is, man.
Well, this
Swimmer's
is
got to
the
swim, right?
you do have to swim. See, this is the thing. And all those of us who are swimmers, and whenever we be out and we meet kids from California and Florida, all you California and Florida kids, like, yeah, you live the life where you have outdoor pools. That's just what you know. Us Northeastern kids, that's not a thing. You gotta practice in the wintertime. So we wake up early in the cold and we go inside to pools, which of course, the first time you're outside your outdoor pools, you're like, this is just a much better way to live.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we do it this way?
I told my wife, I said, man, the pool feels warm, but the whole room is warm.
Well, yes. It's a
And
hot
she's like,
box.
yeah, you can't breathe in there. Listen, we have lots of indoor pools too, as you
Yes.
can imagine.
Right.
One right by my house, that's an Olympic-sized pool. It's
Mhm.
amazing. It's always full of young kids swimming. Typically, I don't like going there. I'd rather just turn literally 100 times in my small. My pool's not that small, but it's small enough
Yeah.
than have to swim one of those monstrosities indoors. But it is what it is. Meanwhile, it's super warm here.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I'm getting heat warnings on my phone, but I just have to giggle. Literally giggled this morning. It was beautiful this morning for me, but in Canada, I guess they think it's really hot. Although
Well,
I did tell my Uber driver yesterday, like, bro, put your fucking window up, put the AC on, okay? Right? It's fucking hot outside. It's not that hot, but it's hot enough to put an AC on.
in the northeastern part of the country, and I think some other places, we are expecting a bit of a heat wave.
Yeah.
So it was like 89 maybe yesterday, probably 91, I think today is supposed to be which,
Yeah.
but like with the humidity and like, we don't often get a bunch of like mid
Right.
90s. Like that's not, it's not very normal. But David's like, that's old hat for me.
That's just another Wednesday of the summer. Yeah. There's nothing new about it.
David, the Boston Celtics
Yeah.
are NBA champions for a NBA record 18th time. They are now standalone on top, and I know all the Los Angeles Lakers fans are so angry that
Whatever.
the Celtics have one more title than they do. They did what I thought they were going to do. They came out with the requisite energy, effort, and all the things. The second efforts were there, third efforts, all that. And look, David, what we thought was true at the beginning of this series happened. The Celtics were the better team all year, like top to bottom. And they did it in the finals, right? I was looking at this stat. They held the Mavs below 100 points in all 4 wins and below 90 points in 2 of the 4. I was like, well, you're probably going to win all those games. And they did.
I thought the game could have been a really good game. I thought Dallas had kind of excised the demon. The X factor variable, whatever you want to call it, was how well is Boston going to play? And the answer was really well. To start the game, they were really smoking. And Dallas, just the one game was an aberration. The only team that could really score on Boston, I looked it up this morning, was Indiana. I think Indiana's offensive rating in their game was, in their series, like 114 point something. That they basically turned the Celtics defense without Porzingis, it's important to note, into the Sacramento Kings defense this year, which was just average.
Right.
Just average. But then you have to remember they have another side of the court that they're even better at, which is offense. And they didn't have an amazing offensive series against Dallas. Dallas is better than Indiana did. Again, Porzingis, made a difference when he did play. And the better team won. That Dallas they kind of had nothing left after that.
No.
Kind of like when the Knicks blew out the Pacers in Game 5. That was the last we saw of the real Knicks. The same thing with Dallas. So here we are, another champion that looks like they can be great going forward, just like we did a year ago. That team didn't even make it to the finals.
Yep.
Lost a home game in Game 7. Right? Denver was home in Game 7.
Yes, yeah.
Minnesota,
and Minnesota really was
yeah.
like, wow.
Seems like so long ago. So
it kind of was.
Yeah. Boston, the 18 franchises, whatever. I mean, their name, Boston Celtics, has been the same.
Right.
There's really nothing else connecting except it's the same city. But this team, to me, a bunch of conference finals, 2 NBA finals, one championship, and looks like they should be relevant for at least 3-4 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Tatum getting All NBA. The person that told me that he thought Tatum was going to Miami, the executive was saying it. I don't see any way Tatum leaves, not because they won a championship,
Right.
but because of the money.
Yeah.
It's 300 plus million, I think, is what they're expecting. So Tatum, Brown together. I thought Tatum as a teammate was just perfect in the series. I have a hard time believing they're not going to try to run it back. And
I mean,
the Porzingis injury is the one question.
Yeah, for sure. All right, before we look into future looking, David, this to me Celtics team this year for sure they were an all-time team, right? You said number one offense in the history of the league. You did their final stats, right? They were 83 and 20,
81 and 20,
81, which is again
80 and 21, 80 and 21.
One of the better records that you'll see from an NBA champion. And they followed a progression. You mentioned all of their conference finals and all that stuff to get here. David, this team followed a progression that we used to see in the NBA all the time in the 80s and 90s. Teams just didn't wake up one day and win championships. They had to get their hearts broken, get their ass kicked, lose in the conference finals a bunch. Matter of fact, some teams like the Dominique Wilkins-led Atlanta Hawks never got past the conference final, because they just weren't good enough.
Right.
This team has been and done all the steps, but I feel like they're not being, and again, they're not being talked about in that way. Like, this team has done it. They have built themselves the right way, have fought through all the adversity, heartbroken, all the things, like deserve it champions without question.
If you're asking me to opine on why some people are saying I'm not going to fall for that. The people that I think understand and respect the history and love the history of the game, as well as the adventure and journey and hardships of being an NBA player and team, we're all saying this. What you just said, it is an all-time level team that benefited from some injuries. But during the regular season, they by the way, they were missing their starting center for most of it. It was really good, and they could stand toe to toe with any team because they were a two-way monster.
Yep.
Bring in your best Warriors teams, bring in your best Lakers teams. I mean, forget about 20 years ago. That game was so different. The Heat teams, this team stands right there with them, and I think you asked me on the document, like, why do they get disrespected? I don't know the answer. I'm curious what you think, but I think in part it's because they don't have the top 5 guy. Tatum isn't. He just isn't.
Right.
I mean, he may be all NBA, but he's not a top 5 player because 2 of the best players in the world play the same position.
Correct.
So and Giannis is, in some cases, I would say better than Tatum, and he plays the same position, but. So that hurts them, I think, in terms of how we see them. And I don't think as a populace they really can put their arms around the Jazz portion of this game, where they get too caught up in the virtuoso performer, Magic and Kareem and Bird and on. When in reality, it's always an illusion. Jordan was greatly benefited by Scottie Pippen.
And Horace Grant and everybody else.
And the level of defense the team played and the system that they employed to let Jordan do his thing while also other people could flourish. This is the game that we play. There's no star pitcher. There's no star quarterback. This was a great team. Our sport is all about that. And the fact that they were elite on both ends of the court tells you a ton.
Yeah.
And really weren't pushed a whole lot along the way. And that's why I think that they got a hell of a team going forward.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and of course I asked that question tongue in cheek because I know you hate answering stuff like that. But I do think you're right. It's because for the narratives and how they're talked about by the mainstream media, there's no Luka character, right? Luka's on the Mavericks. There isn't that virtuoso But I'm like, who cares? Tatum, Brown, White, and Horford, Porzingis, those 5. I'll take all 5 of them versus your virtuoso any day, right? Because all of them play jazz, to David's point. Everyone gets their chance to solo for a little bit, right? Like there's that saying, right? Like when you have a solo and it's your turn, you better be ready to blow, right? And everybody on the Celtics, when it's their turn, they're ready, right? Whatever form that may be, maybe defense, whatever. They're all ready and capable of doing different things. And I think we're seeing the ensemble and why that is so important, right? How everybody talked about, we said it before, everybody talked about Dame and this guy and Bradley Beal and who gets, them guys have been home since April, right? Like, meanwhile, Drew Holiday, right? Drew Holiday probably led in plus minus. I haven't checked, right? Yeah, because he helps you win possessions. That's what matters, winning possessions, which allows Tatum and Brown to do all their other things. And I think people maybe now, David, are slowly starting to see that.
I was talking to a young NBA player recently, and I said to him, I've texted to him before, and then I said to him on a phone or in person, whatever. I said, Drew Holiday and Derek White and Kyle Lowry to me are three guys that they've got some pretty cool things in common. They're two-way performers. They're winners. They're champions now that Derek White's got one, and they're fucking rich guys.
Yes.
Right? They aren't the sexy names that we think about with Luka and Kyrie's brilliant with the ball and all that. Winners, champions, two-way players, rich guys. That's a hell of a fucking neighborhood to live in if you aspire to be an NBA player. I realized Kyle Lowry was greatly helped by Kawhi, but I watched that series for True Hoop. Without Kyle Lowry, they don't win that series, even with all the injuries of Golden State. There's just something about that kind of player. And the truth is, I love Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. I can question some of Jayson Tatum's shot selection on occasion. I do question it. I don't question his commitment to playing the right way most of the time. I don't question his commitment to defense and effort. I really tried to focus on Tatum when they announced Brown because to me it was 50-50.
Yeah.
I would have given it to him both or even given
co-MVPs. Yep.
Yeah. And for MVP, right. And if Tatum was upset, he's the best actor of any athlete I've ever seen.
He didn't show it at all.
Genuinely thrilled for Jaylen Brown. And they don't have to be best friends. I have no idea what their relationship's like. I know that I've never understood the idea of breaking them up. I've never understood the idea of why that had to happen.
Well, you and I have always said, if you have two all NBA and all defensive caliber wings, you'd be crazy to break that up, unless literally they were beating each other up in the locker room. All right, which
if there was a chemistry issue, but I don't sense that there.
Right.
Yeah. And Brad Stevens just stayed the course and made his adjustments they had to make, and here we are.
And I think that, to your point about Tatum not being upset when Brown won it, I think what you saw, David, at least what I saw, what I read from Tatum and Brown's faces, was the joy and appreciation of one another and the journey, right? Because the journey is what matters. Destination, but I think in that moment, once the tickets were going down, all things were popping in their head. Game 7 loss to the Miami, the Cavaliers and LeBron James, being up 3-0 and losing Game 7 to all those things were piling through their brains. And they're like, man, we went through all that valley and we're here now. Like the ultimate prize. I think they appreciate it. How could you not?
I think Tatum, it's been a real whirlwind for me this last week and been in a few different cities and everything. And so maybe I missed some things, but I seemed like after the game, Tatum talked about, we did it. We finally did it. And it's easy to have some self-doubt.
Sure.
When you're used to not doing it, as in, I've never done it. He didn't win a championship at Duke. He didn't win a championship in the NBA ever. These are human beings, I think he did have some questions as to, can I do this? Can we do this? Is the system we play the right one? Missoula's a young coach, and you can't help but have that doubt creep in, even when you're having the success you've had. But now that it's happened, I don't think the NBA can be thrilled about that. I mean, the NBA, I should say the other 29 teams. The league is fine.
I think a huge weight is lifted off their shoulders, right? In that they know, because they've gotten to at least the conference. I mean, Tatum's been to 7 conference finals? I mean,
7.
So this isn't like, oh, I'm some guy who doesn't know how to advance deep. He's pretty much advanced deep every year he's been in the NBA, just about, right? So
if they're about to do a Derek White deal, probably they just did Holiday last year. Brown's got a long deal. Jarod, Tatum's going to go down potentially as one of the all-time winningest playoff players ever.
He will.
He's got the way the league is trending now with the money. One of the things that people don't talk about much, we noticed how LeBron supposedly spent $1 million a year on his body. Okay. That's nothing to these guys now.
Right.
Nothing. I mean that. Nothing. To as an investment, I mean, you're from you've been in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're making 50 a year and you spend only 1 million on the edifice that keeps you to feed your family,
Right.
it's not a big expenditure.
Nope, not at all.
R&D is small. The R&D department's small.
Very small.
Yeah. Like this guy could be doing this when he's 36, 37. It doesn't be the level he is now. He can still be very good. And yeah, he's going to go down as one of the winningest playoff players ever. Brown's not going to be far behind him.
Nope.
Yeah, so I think Boston. I mean, I don't know if they'll win it again.
Right.
A lot of shit has to happen.
Of course.
You know, they're going to be right there as a favorite. You can't ask for anything more than that.
No, they will have something to say for the next, as long as those two contracts for those two guys.
At least.
Yes, they will have something to say about who the NBA champion is. And I think now Brad, who we have to talk about this, David, who seamlessly transferred from a very good young coach, head coach, who realized maybe I'm not the guy with the right voice to do this, to transition into the front office and clearly do that job possibly even better than as a head coach, right? Because he was the architect that put the team together to actually win the thing. All they've got to do is keep making those changes around those other players, right? Development of their draftees, their G League guys, all of that. Make the right trade. Now we don't want Damian Lillard. Drew Holiday's our guy. Yeah, I'm going to spend on Derek White. That's the guy we need. Like they keep doing that, and Brad gets a ton of credit for what he saw in putting this team together.
I mean, hell of an executive. They have some good young players from the two-way level on up. The Neemias Queta is a stud. Drew Peterson's a stud, and both were two-way players this year. I think Queta might have got a deal. They're probably bringing Hauser back on. I think they can maybe drop a year of his option and get an extension for him. Pritchard has found a great role as a half-court heaver.
Man, I was like, tell me that shot. And sure enough. And it just everybody gets so galvanized by it. I'm like, okay, there it is.
See Tatum give a chest bump. Yeah. I mean, Horford's the first one they got to replace.
Yes,
but,
for sure.
And it's not nothing. And then we'll see how KP is healthy is. That's an important thing. But yeah, they're deserving champions. And I thought Denver was flawed last year. I didn't love them going into this season. I liked them. I didn't love them. I love Boston going into next season as it stands today.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. All right, let's split the side to the other. You know, there's winners, there's losers. And I mean, losers, whatever. You went to the NBA Finals. I mean, you're not a loser. You just ran into a better team. It happens.
Right.
Where do the Mavericks go from here? And I ask that because Luka, exceptional. We know we've talked about ad nauseum where he needs to get better. He knows where he needs to get better. His running mate is 30, 31, and
maybe 32.
Look, and he's a smaller guy, and he's got a lot of miles in that NBA body. I'm not saying predicting Kyrie's demise. All I'm saying is that's something to keep your eye on. So where do the Mavericks go from here?
Well, they've got to re-sign. Well, first of all, a big picture, this is a healthy team. Unfortunately, they have an onerous owner coming in.
Oh, that whole we'll talk about owners later, but yes, the Alderson family. That's
beyond disgusting. So that's a whole nother thing. But I like their roster a lot. Whether they're going to keep Lively, they can keep Gafford, have 48 minutes of. I thought there were times in the series Gafford was better. There were times Lively was definitely better. Overall in the playoffs, Lively was better and probably gets penciled as a starter in year 2. Made a 3 in game 4, which was nice to see.
Well, if that becomes a thing, look out.
I was told by one of his teammates before I wrote an article before game 4 that he can shoot the 3. I wasn't told that from a teammate in the Mavericks. I was told from an AAU teammate, a young man that I help, that Lively can shoot. He just didn't get a chance to do it, and then he made a 3 that night. PJ Washington, I like his fit.
Yes.
They've got to pay for Derek Jones Jr. We'll see. Omax Prosper, I happen to think he's going to be a high-level starter, if not a future all-star. He's still 21 years old. Still, now 21 years old. Give that dude time. Jaden Hardy, I'm not as high on, but he's certainly a bucket. Super talented offensive player. Not sure he's going to make it. They can do something with Timmy Hardaway if they want to move him. So as Kyrie ages, they have other players potentially picking up the slack. We have to look at the reality is they got beat by a much better team. And also they finished the season starting from, February, March as an elite defensive team.
Right.
So elite defensive team with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on your team with 2 lob threats at all times. That's a hell of a recipe.
Yep.
So that plays when you look at next year's team, which we'll look at next year's season in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There's no smoke and mirrors. There's no magic mirrors with that team. They're legit, and they're going to be right there next year.
Okay, I like it. Just got to do some tweaking, and we got to see. By the way, Nico should get some credit. Dallas Mavericks GM really put together again. PJ was what a revelation, and getting Gafford, and if Lively develops like we think he can, and Omax Prosper, and to David's point, now Luka is just. We know what he's got to be better at, right? You've got to have. You're not going to be anybody's All NBA defensive player, but what you need to be is not a turnstile on defense, right?
Well, we just talked about Boston learning, so I didn't get to that point. Dallas also has that. Luka, I thought showed some humility in the playoffs, as did Kyrie. I thought the whole way. I thought it was an absolutely terrible series. If you look at the combination of minutes, 48 times 5.
Yeah.
There were not a lot of minutes that were really dramatic to me and high level play from both sides. You tend to get one side or the other too much. But I thought the sportsmanship was terrific. Not that people care, but I do. I care about that for my game, for our game. And I just thought Dallas showed a lot of class. And just like Boston, as you just described, this is their first championship with 7 Eastern Conference Finals.
Correct.
Dallas has 2 now.
Right.
Well, Luka has 2 anyway. They're going to grow. They can grow from this. I did hear from someone that Luka probably isn't going to play in the Olympics. I don't know if that's true or not.
I would hope he doesn't. He needs to rest. My God.
He needs to rest for sure. He shouldn't. But, some of those teams are starting to practice like in a week. No chance he's doing that.
What a nightmare. You just finished the NBA Finals. Come on, man.
Nationalism. It gets everybody. It's crazy. But, I think that if you're a Dallas fan, you should buy 5 years season tickets.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a little hint for David coming soon, and our projections a little bit later. You're liking Dallas, okay?
Yeah. How do you not? They figured out their defense, and they've got Luka and Kyrie. Luka should still be getting better. And remember, Luka shot terribly in this series.
He did.
They've got to do. They know when you lose these things, you kind of get a clearer glimpse of, all right, we've got to fix this, and this, and tweak this and this. And I think Dallas can do that and just be right there, competing with the Denvers and OKCs in Minnesota next year.
No guarantees, of course, that they do fix it, but they very clearly know these are the things we need to get better at. It's better to have that, right? In some ways, right? It's actually better to lose in the NBA Finals than to be like a middling team who doesn't make the playoffs because you're how do I even know what I need to do? They know exactly what they have to do to get back here next year and win it. So we'll see if they do it. Yeah. All right, guys, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. One of the things, David, that I like to talk about, and we like to talk about at True Hoop, is what teams can learn from, successful ones, and what are the ways in which teams build going forward. And we talked a lot about how last summer all the talk was Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard, and we like it's like acting, right? You want to go to the show with the big Hollywood A-listers, right? That's why you want to go, and also they're very good at their job. But sometimes if you miss a streak of indie films, you might be like, man, that's some excellent acting. We got some guys in here who, if I pair them with Denzel or Robert Downey Jr. or whatever, now I got something I'm cooking with, right? And so Boston did a great job of filling out the pieces around Tatum and Brown. And we love the term stars in their role, right? And that is for sure what Drew and Derek White are. Superstars in their role at what they do, among the best in the league, all defensive honors and all that. So what can teams learn from the Boston Celtics? You had a piece come out earlier this week about what Boston did so well and what teams really should be trying to copy if they can.
Yeah. I was talking recently with Rick Carlisle. We were together somewhere, and I told him that I've said on our show and I've written in a newsletter that every team and the lower levels, youth groups, whatever in the world, should play the way the Pacers play. And he hadn't thought about it and seemed pretty interested in just that concept of like everybody weaponized, the balls flying, player. It's more fun.
Yeah.
Race, pass, race, shoot, race, drive, pass, pass, pass. I think Boston doesn't do it quite like Indiana, just because they have a little bit different personnel and better overall talent in a couple spots. But nevertheless, they've got 5 shooters and 4 drivers. And I used to always say, way back, even 15 years ago, I have the 80% rule. I probably never told you this before. I have an 80% rule as a coach. I want 80% of my players to be athletes. I want 80% of them to be shooters and drivers.
Okay.
The Celtics took that up a notch. I wouldn't say they're all athletes, although none of them are stiffs. And obviously, when KP's in, he's pretty good for 7'4". But drivers and shooters, man, they're all playmakers. And I had dinner recently with a player who's played against Boston a bunch about how much they wear you down because it's so hard to score on them, and it's so hard to keep them from scoring because of how they play. It's not like it's Harden's Rockets where everything is kind of slow, lull you to sleep, Harden. It's just different than that. And they don't, not that they don't have moments of that, they do. Whereas Indiana has less so, although Tyrese can do it a little bit. I really like that idea of putting shooters and drivers on the court. OKC does it. And they won a number 1 seed in the West.
Sure did.
It helps to have a shooting 5. You look at the 2 best offenses this year. Miles Turner shot 40+% from 3, and Porzingis is a feared shooter for Boston. That's something you could learn from, is find yourself a shooting big, especially if you can rim protect and or rebound, and just get a bunch of drivers and play fast. So Boston played fast too. They weren't a walk-up team.
You know, we talk about too, when you have 5 weaponized guys.
Yeah.
If you're playing defense against a team with 5 weaponized guys, well, you're not helping off anyone, right? Because your guy's active and live, right? If he gets the ball. And now that means your elite guys, who you said your 2 guys who are better, your Tatum and Brown, now get somebody in one-on-one. And most teams don't have 2, 3, 4 elite lockdown one-on-one defenders. So we saw it all game. Tatum drives to the rim. I'm like, he collapses because no one can stay in front of him. And he's such a willing passer, right? The minute help comes, he's getting off that thing right away. And I'm like, oh, you're in trouble now.
Very often, correct. I put this in the article we wrote. 2 of the first 3 possessions were the Jrue Holiday slip screen, where he just got a bucket inside, and later on he slipped, got in the paint, gave it to Brown for a monster dunk. Might have been second quarter. And so they're big shoot threes. Their guards can operate in the paint and set great screens. I can tell you this: when I talk to my NBA guards, we're talking about Holiday and White as screeners and defenders, not just the more obvious stuff that we always want to work on that too. We're working on some players out today, and we're going to be talking about those kinds of actions where we have to be great with the ball, but not always, especially if I have a teammate that is. I can set better screens. I can take pride in setting better screens, and that also means I can ghost them better or blur them better, where they know I'm coming to set a screen. I'm zipping out to shoot that 3. Maybe I'm dragging 2 with me because they're worried about my ghost action, and now my driver just can drive. There was a great play. There was a number of plays I saw where, like, Kyrie is such a threat to shoot. And this was against Boston, that he went to run a pick and roll at the top of the key. Horford had a bad starting position because Jrue Holiday got beat at the point of attack. Horford was expecting Kyrie to use the screen, and Kyrie recognized that Horford is cheating over too much to show on the screen. I'm going to quickly reject to get right to the rim and score, and he did. It's what might happen in a defender's mind. What might happen is dictating movements. And as an offense player, I could take advantage of that inability to be in the right space at the right time because I'm predicting the future and I messed up. I failed at my prediction. And so to me, Boston, this was with Kyrie had the ball, but Boston caused a lot of problems with that. Because their guys can do so many things. And I don't know how many teams will be innovative and try to institute this kind of thing. I think it'd be smart to do.
I mean, it seems that way, right? So we always talk about, okay, teams and GMs and owners seeing who won and what works and trying to implement it. We also know, David, in the NBA, superstar players, right, have influence in their front offices about what they should do.
Yeah.
We know Giannis wanted Dame, right? Like KD and Book wanted Bradley Beal. Do you think watching because these guys all watch the finals, that it's getting these guys to shift their thinking and being like, maybe we don't need another superstar shoot scorer. We got to get Drew Holiday and Derek White or those types of players in here.
Yeah.
That's what's going to help us. Because if those guys see it, that might help.
I was talking to a couple agents yesterday, 3 different agents about that very thing, about go find players that can do everything. Even if they're not to be superstars, those are really valuable guys. They're going to get paid a bunch of money. They're going to win a bunch of fucking games. Carry yourself the right way. Be super professional. And if you need to score 20 in a game, be able to do it. Be happy to score 8 some games and not care twice because your team still won. You've got to humble yourself and lower your ego a little bit and fit into the big picture. And then I think you're super valuable.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Paul George, who was a free agent, was talking recently on one of his podcasts, and he talked about, this year when they made the trades and then some of their guys went over to Philly when they got Harden, and he said, we lost Rocco, Robert Covington, we lost Nico. Those were our glue guys. They would get rebounds, they would rotate, they were defensive guys. They did a lot of the dirty work. Now myself and Kawhi, we become the dirty guys and have to score too. And it was just a lot, talking about the Clippers. And I was like, that's what made me spark that question. I'm like, Paul, do you realize we didn't need James Harden if we just kept those kind of guys around, right? Or maybe upgraded at that area and not got another guy making $45 million a year or whatever, could we have advanced further? Now, the big thing with Clippers is always, if the health of those two guys isn't good, it really doesn't matter, right? Because they're such linchpins, right? If Brown and Tatum were hurt for the Celtics, they'd have the same problem, right? So it always predicated on your best guys being healthy. But assuming that, God, it's so important to have depth, and to your point, guys who can do everything around them.
Yeah. It's not easy to build a team. It's like Tetris. You got to fit everything together, and I think it helps to have a coach that builds your culture, gets guys to buy in. It's very hard because sometimes buying into the team culture means you're losing money yourself, and it's a business for these guys. It's how they're going to feed their families for a long time. But the best coaches seem to do a good job. And honestly, people really credited Joe Mazzulla in Boston.
They do.
His focus, his intensity. He's built himself a nice little following.
He has tapped into something with that team and connected with them, and you can see it. We worried about that when Ime left, because Ime for sure had that with those guys, right?
Yeah.
They got to the finals, for crying out loud. And we were like, oh man, what, this new guy, he wasn't ready for this. And it showed in year one, right? But he had his time, and you always say, right, how a coach is on day one, they're going to be miles better in year 2 and year 3, right?
Maybe.
Like he can only, if he keeps working, he's going to get better, right? At this stuff. But the relational part, that I can see just watching on TV, that part is there already. And that's the biggest thing. But David, as someone who does this for a living, how hard is that, right? To get that through to your players, particularly if maybe their whole basketball identity is built around, no, but I'm the scorer guy. If I'm not that guy, what am I, right? How do you work with the guy to get them to understand, but you can be more than that? It may seem like less, but you're actually being more.
I was talking to an agent late last night who's got a player that's going to sign, I think, a really nice extension, like a big extension. And he was crediting the player's family. And he's just an amazing family, apparently. And I think that what you just said, a lot of times it's not just the player you got to get through. It's his team around him. And I don't mean the NBA team.
Yeah.
I mean, the other people that player is talking to, not an entourage necessarily, because that's friends, but the people working with that player, that was the personal coach, strength coach, physio, nutritionist, chef, mom, dad, brother, girlfriend, wife, all those things factor in. And so you got to get everyone rowing in the same boat.
Whew, that's a lot of people, David.
It is. It helps to have a player take control of that, because ultimately everyone's going to follow the player. And so what I try to do is get the player to have a swagger about the process. Like, I know this is the right process. Come on board or you're out. Come on board or you're out. I just don't, I mean, obviously you can't say it to your mom or dad, but you can cut them out of any business discussions. If you're not going to see things the way I see things, I don't want to deal with you when it comes to basketball. I've talked to both parents and agents sometimes who really stress, they had a meal with their son and we never brought basketball up one time. Normally that's either because lots of other things are happening or they're not seeing things eye to eye and they just don't want to fight, which is great. It is a real challenge. It's a challenge for these teams. It's a challenge for the players because there's so much money at stake and there's so much ego. It's not the same thing in most corporations. And I remember, I don't try to talk to owners much anymore, but I used to talk to them more. And I remember talking to one very famous owner. He's, I think he still owns the team now. I don't pay attention that closely. But he just thought he could, hammer out a relationship between his star player and his coach. And because that's what he did with his businesses. And I told him on the phone, sorry, your top salesperson couldn't run to Sports Illustrated or ESPN, or whatever, and say anything.
Right.
Or your coach couldn't call a quick press conference, didn't have a coach. These employees. It's different. It's harder. The spotlight's on all the time. Social media is there too. And so the players who have a really good emotional IQ and get the day-to-day process right have a big advantage.
Yeah. And look, I'm not saying this because David's on the show, but why it's important that players who work with coaches, their own personal coaches in the off season, they get people like David who their best interest is what's right for the player, right? And not themselves. And you hear David talk about this stuff. It's very obvious. That's what he cares about. What is best for you, right? How do I get you to be your best version of yourself? And it's always, as you said last week on the show, what's in concert with what the team is telling you, right? Yeah. You're never going to tell them something antithetical to what why would you do that? It helps nobody, right? And that creates division, which we don't need. But it's hard, man. It's really, really hard work and nobody gets it perfect, right? I mean, mistakes happen all the time, but the teams that are better at this kind of thing and the players that have better people around them probably tend to have more success. And now you see why. This is one of the reasons, besides the fact that, as David says, bad guys are trying to stop you on the other end, it's so hard to win in this league, right? Because there's so many things going on.
Yeah, there's ego plays a part in everything. I think people can be too casual with some success, and I appreciate your comments regarding me. I tell players all the time now, I've gotten to be very well known and respected in the industry. I've worked hard for that, Jarod. But I tell every player, like, it means nothing if I can't help you. For you, I'm going to be fine either way. I'm lucky enough now where I have more players wanting to work with me than I have time to work with. I'm hiring 2 more people this year, at least, probably. We're opening up a college division for the first time where I tried one guy last year. They really liked it. Now we're going to do 10 this year. I might do 50 in a year with like 5 new employees. But for that individual, if I can't help you, then you should fire me and go find someone else, because you only get one career. And I know this, speaking personally, first of all, I probably should say to anyone listening, I don't like talking about the players I help because I don't want to promote my work with them. It's their career. This is my business. It's their career. And you guys know that.
Mm-hmm.
Try to be super fair in my evaluations on True Hoop. If I have to talk about a player that I'm working with, I try to be very I know better than anyone what their faults are. That's for sure. They know that. I try not to mix the two as much as I can. And my curriculum works. My players, because you know who I'm working with.
Yep.
They're doing really well.
They sure are.
The ones that aren't, and sometimes it's just because luck has to play a part. And there might be 3 other really good players in front of them, and they just didn't get their chance. Normally, if they get a chance, my guys will do well because we're checking every box. And that's really what we get down to. You can't look at Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown and not respect the work they're putting into their game. Drew Holiday, Derek White, very much the same way. Even Peyton Pritchard and Hauser.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what they're going to do, and they still can do it. Oh, that means a lot. I look at what Rick Carlisle did with Aaron Nesmith.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do it in Boston. Nothing against Boston. They just had a bunch of other guys. He was a lottery pick. He was the 14th pick, I think. He was a very talented player, and he's just now doing it for another team. These guys have to work really hard. And I talked to a player yesterday about a lottery pick on his team, and this was literally yesterday. And the player told me, I don't know if he's going to make it. I said, "You think is it because he doesn't work hard?" He said, "Well, he works hard." But he said, "I don't know if he works smartly." And so he's not getting better the way he needs to get better because he's not smart about his work ethic. To which I have not said this yet, but I will. Like, well, maybe you could take him under your wing and help him a little bit more. But as many players have told me, they don't want to open up to a young player if they're not going to be listened to. Simple as that. They just don't want to waste their energy. And watching the way the Celtics responded to Peyton Pritchard, and obviously Drew and Derek are more well known, but not like MVP level candidates. There's a healthy I mean, I told you I watched the main Celtics. There was like 7 or 8 Boston Celtics all sitting on the floor watching the game. That's like it's not 20 minutes away.
Right. That's a drive.
An hour or whatever. Yeah. They got something going on really special there, and humility matters with stuff like that, I think, anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, these are the things that, you guys who are fans of other teams, when you look at your star players and everybody on your roster, these are the things that you should be thinking about. If you're a super diehard and you're into this, what's that going on? What's our culture like? Do our guys work hard and smart, right? As David says, is what's happening in games informing what they do in practice. I mean, of course, you'll never know that directly because they're not going to tell you what they're doing in practice, but you'll be able to see by watching, wow, we're not getting better. What's going on here? What's happening? There are a lot of things that go into being good and then winning in this league. And that's why very few people are able to do it consistently. All right, David, some news and notes. The draft will be here next week, June 26th and 27th. It's going to be over 2 days. First round on Wednesday, second round on Thursday. Did I get that right? Or Thursday, Friday? One of the two. Either way, that's how they're going to do it. I know you haven't started looking at it yet, but you will probably sometime next week start
hopefully
figuring out who's good or who's not. And we said it before. There is no one right now being talked about the way Victor, LeBron, KD, there's nobody like that. So being talked about that last night doesn't mean there isn't anybody in this draft who could potentially one day be that. Nobody sees that right now. That means teams, this is an opportunity. Know what you're looking for. These are the talent. These are the characteristics we want. Get them in our program. All the things that David talked about. Royal jelly, develop them. All the things. You got tons of options now, right? Like, this is your time.
Drew Holiday went number 16. Derek White, I think, went number 30. So there you go.
I mean, right? They're there. They are out there. We talked about teams that do things right. David, to a team that does things so poorly, the Detroit Pistons fired Monty Williams, and they owe him $65 million still. Look, I know that coach money doesn't count against the cap, but I do know this. Billionaires don't like spending money just for nothing. And so
you could argue that.
In this case, clearly, I'm like, I have no idea. So they have to pay Monty the rest of this money and then find a new coach. Like, guys, we got to be better. We got to be better about stuff like this. If you're a Detroit Pistons fan, I'm sorry. That's all I can tell you. I'm sorry. Jeff Van Gundy, David, be the Clippers' top assistant. Jeff has not been. I know he did some Team USA stuff with like the teams that went to like the World Games and stuff like that.
Right.
But like he hasn't been an NBA guy for a little bit now. What do you think about that?
I think there might be a real steep learning curve for him. I think he's got a big basketball brain. If he can help Ty Lue, I don't know what his role is going to be. Top assistant coach, I don't know what that means. If he's just going to coach up Ty Lue, maybe that. Not that I think Ty necessarily needs it. But yeah, the game has changed a lot since he really is locked in on it. And I have question marks about it. I do. But I like him just fine. I didn't love him as a broadcaster, but I as a person, he seems fine. Yeah. I think he's a very knowledgeable coach. There are some basic things about defense that carry over. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if he focuses on that more. Maybe he has a great voice. Maybe these players will respond to him defensively. That's what they need.
And, sometimes when you're away from something, you gain a different appreciation for it when you come back. So maybe that all the years broadcasting, maybe something,
Right. Watching a lot of practice. Yeah. I mean, it's not the dumbest thing in the world.
And he was with the Celtics, we should note, last year. So like a special advisor and been around them. So I think, look, he's a basketball lifer, this guy, clearly. Like he doesn't know how to operate unless he's near the game. So I hope that he's able to bring something positive and valuable to the 76ers, to the Clippers, and they in turn give him something positive, right?
The basketball, I don't know if he was offered the same spot again in Boston on what it paid. I can tell you that whether one of my two sons, Ryan Pannone or Max Thorpe, ever get to be a head coach somewhere and they want to pay me a bunch of money to be an advisor, that's about the only way I would leave my businesses to join a team. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
If I could just live wherever my wife live in Costa Rica, wherever my wife wants to live, and just consult for one of my sons,
Yeah.
pretty sweet. But maybe Jeff felt like I have more to give, or maybe there was nothing there in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers need some defensive help. I'm hoping he can do it.
And maybe he learned something while he was in Boston. He's like, ooh, we can take some of this, So we'll see. It hasn't been announced yet because officially the paper hasn't been signed yet because free agency doesn't begin until July 1. But we've heard all the reports that Pacers are prepared to offer Pascal Siakam a 4-year, $189.5 million maximum extension. We all here agree, well worth it. He is such a key part to what the Pacers' resurgence was the second half of the season and their run to the conference finals. And look, we're excited about what that team could be. And Pascal, of course, with Tyrese and Andrew and everybody else, is a huge part of that.
When I talked to Carlisle last week, and I was taken with something he said about how his voice in the locker room was underrated. A Pacers player told me the same thing, that everyone listens to everything P says in a way that no one else on the team could affect us this way.
The adult in the room.
Rick said the adult in the room, but also valuable experience and didn't talk just to talk. A lot of players never shut up. He's not a super talkative guy, apparently, and just carried himself really well. I read yesterday he and Tyrese won their minutes together in all 3 playoff series.
That's a good sign.
In Boston, they only played 2 games together. That was in Boston, and they won their minutes. So with all those young guys they've got, that's a good thing. I said this 6 months ago. He's the perfect power forward for that blur ball team. Playmaker, best running big we have in the league. Can score in the paint, can score in the mid range. Shot 39% or so from 3 for the Pacers. Doesn't need to be the spotlight guy. Tyrese has it. He doesn't seem to care. And they're not going to be able to pay anyone. This was their free agency in a sense. They're not going to pay anyone. It's Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So they seem like, that's a team. We're going to get to our top 5, whatever. I thought they played Boston tougher than anyone. I realized Dallas won 1 game. But I thought Jaylen Brown said it after game 4 and they beat them. They played us tougher than pretty much any team we've seen all year. And I don't know if anyone asked him after the finals. I think Boston would say Indiana gave us the most trouble.
Offensively, for sure. I mean, they scored over 100 every time in those 4 games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're average 114. Yeah. And so, I think Pascal's got to get better at a few things. But I think he's a perfect fit for them. And now his and Halliburton's contracts, I think they're both together for 4 years.
Nice.
Pascal will probably try to get an extension in 2 more years when he's eligible for 1. And he didn't start playing basketball when he was 17.
Yeah.
He didn't really start getting minutes in the NBA until he was 22.
So he can still get better.
Yeah. He's aging very well.
Yeah, no. Kudos to Indiana and to Pascal. It's generational money. David, the Koch family, Julia Koch, is buying. This had been rumored about since I want to say the winter. He's making it official. Will purchase a 15% stake in BSE Global. BSE Global owns the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Liberty of the WNBA. Joe Tsai is the current owner and chairman of BSE Global. You don't have to do a whole lot of research. We do a little cursory research of the Koch family. I know their names are on buildings, and you think, benevolent donors and all that. Great. Just do a little bit of research and find out some of the stuff that family has funded, some of the right-wing atrocities that happen in this country, and not great, right? More of this dark, not great money coming into the NBA. And look, when expansion happens, which it will. We mentioned Miriam Adelson earlier, who is the new Mavericks majority owner, who definitely bad news. When the league expands, and the list is short of who can pay $5 billion for an expansion. It ain't many people. It's going to be some bad dudes, right? The Saudi sovereign wealth one probably is going to be a big part of whoever owns the next team, and that's just not great for our sport.
I don't think it is either. I was talking to a friend of mine who's from Germany, and he doesn't really understand how dark things can get. And I told him it's ironic considering where you're from. Like there's a faction that's not small that really wants to take us to the dark ages. And do you ever listen? I'm not going to get into politics here, but do you ever listen to Rachel Maddow?
Yeah,
She has
on
a
occasion.
podcast called Ultra.
Yeah, I've heard it.
So now she has a new one out. I just started listening to it.
Oh, yeah?
Next Ultra. And it's just basically how close we were to being a bunch of Nazis in this country.
Yeah,
Like it
very
really
close.
is true. These are all, and she does an amazing job on the podcast. So you can actually listen to the speeches. Like these are real things that happen. And there's real articles that document all of this kind of stuff. There was a lot of people who thought we should just be a bunch of Nazis in America. And now those same people are trying to buy NBA teams and succeeding. So yeah, I don't think it's so good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a positive for our league, that's for sure.
It definitely is, and it's something that bears watching, and we at True Hoop here, we'll be keeping our eyes on that. All right, I thought we'd do something fun. Since the season is officially over now, the basketball playing, we always do top fives on Thursday, and I said, let's do top five, but let's do forward looking. The top 5 teams we see going into next season. Now, with the caveat of knowing we have no idea who's getting drafted, no idea who's being signed in free agent, and no idea who's being traded. We know none of this stuff. But as of right now, looking forward and assuming health, who are the best 5 teams we like going into next season?
Jarod, I'm going to wildly disappoint you. I have more than 5 teams.
Well, listen, there's a million.
So no, I honor your request, and then I decided not to do it.
All right, so give me your honorable mentions.
No. So what I did is I just gave a couple tiers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to blow you off entirely, Jarod. It's a fair thing to ask of me. So I've got a nice little list here. So here, first of all, here are 5 teams that I think are intriguing going into free agency for different reasons. I've got Milwaukee, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Heat.
Very interesting teams, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard a smart agent told me yesterday, he thought there might be some smoke to the fire of LeBron going to Phoenix.
God.
Not even on my list.
Who the hell even? I mean, yeah.
So there's just what is Miami doing with Jimmy Butler? Because I like, if they're healthy, I like the way Bam improved this year and shot threes late. We know about the Bucks, whatever. So then I have a larger list. This would be, well, first of all, that was tier 3. Here's tier 1. Boston.
Oh yeah.
So they're in their own tier.
Yep.
Okay. So now I have 1, 2, 3. I've got 7 teams.
Wow.
To fight for 4 spots.
Okay.
And I'll do it right now on top of my head based on what I'm looking at the more likely scenario.
Okay.
I've got Philly there because I'm not going to assume Embiid's hurt.
Right.
And he's just such a marvelous.
Well, I said
player.
Assume health. So yeah.
And weren't they like a 2 seed?
Yeah.
Before he got hurt.
Yep.
Okay. I really like the Knicks. I like how tough they are. I love what Brunson was able to do. I don't know about OG. I'm reading that he's been unhappy.
Yeah, I saw some
weird
stuff.
to me.
I don't know if that's just like shit that people putting out there or how true it is. I haven't talked to anybody. I don't know, but that is out there.
I need to find that out. So I got the Knicks. I have OKC, and I have Denver and Dallas. Okay, but then I threw in Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
And Indiana.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah. I just that Siakam Halliburton combination. Nembhard and Tyrese have been plus both years when they've been together. They've got these young guys to grow into even more roles. Yeah, Minnesota is obvious. I don't know what they're going to do with their 2 bigs.
Yep.
I think those are all the teams that. But if I was a betting guy, today I would say Knicks, Sixers, Nuggets, Thunder, Boston, with Dallas right there. Yeah.
That and then the Celtics in their own tier. So in your
mind,
Celtics
are on their own.
All things being the champ coming out of somewhere in that.
Yeah. What do you have your top?
Okay, so here's what I did. I did an honorable mention line.
Okay.
My honorable mention line starts with the Memphis Grizzlies. Of course, everyone knows I love the Grizzlies, but
fair enough.
They're all going to be back healthy. And this is a young team that was a 2 seed like the last 2 years before they had all that disaster happen. The Nuggets I have on my honorable mention line, and here is why. I'm a little concerned, David, about their depths. One, which we've talked about all year.
Yeah.
And KCP's a year older. Look, I love Michael Porter Jr., but he's got to make like another leap up because they need more help to help Jokic and Murray at scoring. So that's why I have them on that line. All right, on my 5 line. Man, I love blur ball and what the Pacers did this year. I'm a big fan. If they can defend, and they did actually start to defend.
They did.
They're going to be something to watch, and they're young. The Wolves, because I mean, Ant-Man. Now,
Right.
I do worry about them because the two bigs, Rudy's a year older. He's already on the north side of 31, so that's something to be concerned about.
Right.
On my 3 line, the Mavs, because they were just in the NBA Finals.
Yep.
On my 2 line, the Thunder, because they have the most options and they can do the most things. They already play like the Celtics, and they can trade for the next superstar, whatever, and they're ready to roll. And of course, you're defending champion Boston Celtics. I mean, because what's not to love about that?
Yeah, Memphis should have been on my last list. I just don't know what they're doing the Steven Adams role. They're going to go with Triple J at the 5.
Or they're going to draft somebody, or who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Drafting won't matter because that won't help them this year.
So the two big men, Edie and Kling, was that his name? Donovan Kling from UConn? Is that their big man's name?
Yeah.
What do you think about them next year? Can they be any type of productive next year?
I don't think they'll be very productive next year.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah. I like Kling more. I don't love either guy. Edie can be a Valanciunas. He's got to get a lot stronger. He's shooting threes, what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
He does not move well.
They're not ready yet.
A work in progress for a long time, I think. Yeah.
Very good.
I'll watch more tape probably next week. Yeah.
All right. Guys, that is the end of the show. We'll be back next week and we'll talk, who knows, draft, other stuff. We'll start forward looking. Free agency's coming up. This will be interesting too, right? Who's got money? Where do they spend it? Did anybody learn anything? Or are they going to spend $1 billion on somebody who sucks? Probably. Who doesn't help no one? That probably will happen because that's what teams do. All right, guys. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week.